Hey everybody, Chris Lazo here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are continuing through our book breakdown. We started a few weeks ago going through Dan and Chip Heath's book, and I have it right here, Made to Stick, Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die. And we've been going through about 5 or 6 of their concepts or themes. These are concepts or themes that help ideas stick, and we've been applying them specifically to public speaking. And I want to do one of them today. I'll just spend a few minutes on this one. It's pretty short, but one of the concepts they bring up is credibility. Here's why credibility is important when you're speaking in any fashion, by the way, whether it's a keynote, behind a podium, on a stage, in a YouTube video, in education, in a business presentation. It's all the same. You're speaking to people, whether it's recorded or live. Here's why credibility is so important, is because, I don't know if you noticed, but people are skeptical. We don't believe things very quickly, and that's probably partly for good reason. We've just been bombarded by so many claims and advertisements and noise that, you know, our skeptical meters are going full throttle. And so people aren't just going to believe you just because you tell them something or you give them an idea that matters, or you tell them that you have a product or service that they're really going to enjoy or benefit from. One of the ways we can break through that skepticism is by providing credibility. What I mean by that is, as a speaker, I might bring some credibility to my presentation if I am an expert or experienced in that particular thing. For example, I have a lot of experience with public speaking, and so I bring a certain amount of credibility to that. However, if I'm speaking not about public speaking, which is my field, but about something else, let's say tech or medicine, maybe for some reason I'm giving a presentation on something, I'm going to need to bring in some reinforcements. I'm going to have to provide credibility. And even in this case, even if I were speaking on public speaking, which I would like to think of myself as an expert in, bringing in some credible other credible sources is only going to reinforce the evidence and the case that I'm making. So one of the ways, as I mentioned, to break through skepticism is just by providing credibility. Now, what types of credibility are there? I want to give you about four types. You might immediately assume or think quickly of the first two. One is expert credibility. So when we're using expert credibility, we're speaking about somebody, with credentials, the plaque on their wall that has a bunch of letters after their name. And, they might be providing research that we're reading, quoting in our presentation, or an article or a book, or they might show up in an interview, or we might quote them in a TED Talk, whatever it is. Expert credibility is a very useful and popular one. Another one is, and I'm trying to think of the right word for this, but like a celebrity voice. They're not necessarily a doctor or a statistician or anything like that, but they're a very famous voice, and perhaps one that your listeners will be more willing to hear. Maybe their voice is bigger than yours. That's another source of credibility that sometimes helps. Here's the third one: case studies. Case studies involve other people's experience. Another word for this is a testimony or a testimonial. But you are giving an example of how what you're speaking about has worked in somebody else's life. Okay? That's another form of credibility. When people hear us speak as public speakers, one of the things that goes through their head, even if it's subconsciously, is I hear you talking about what you're talking about, but what I really want to know is what you're saying, is what's happening in your life, is what you're promoting possible for me? Can it work for me? And testimonies help them wrap that part of their brain around what you're saying. It gives them examples of how it's working for other people. So there's a really good one right there. A fourth type of credibility is polls or stats. And I know I'm probably going to get in trouble from a statistician for this, but I like to think of those. If a case study is someone's experience, polls and stats are mass experience. If you want a very simplified way of seeing that, you can see trends. With a case study, you're basically giving an anecdote, a single standalone example. Where polls or stats come in more powerfully is it's not just one single isolated anecdote, but it's actually a trend. It's not something that can be explained by a fluke or one single example that might be different from everybody else, but with polls or stats, you're giving a wide view of a trend, and so that really helps sometimes. Those are some types of credibility that you can use. And if you're wondering, okay, how do I incorporate that into a talk? One of the simplest ways of doing that is anytime you make a statement that might be difficult to believe, back it up right afterwards with some kind of source of credibility. For example, if I were to come in and say, working out doesn't just make you strong, it brings you joy. My listeners might not believe that right off the bat, and so I would then follow that statement up with something like, and according to neuroscientists, when we move our bodies, the brain does this, which provides a rush of dopamine, which releases what we commonly refer to as joy. I don't even know if that's true. I just totally made that up. I'm just trying to give you an example of how I might back up a statement that's difficult to believe, that gets people's skepticism meters going, by providing a piece of credibility, either in the form of an expert, a big voice, a case study, or a poll or a stat. And that goes a long way in helping people kind of move beyond their skepticism to what you're saying. That's a very powerful tool.